And the first time that I went through that, I entered the Great Pyramid, the descending corridor, the Great Gallery, I came to the chamber. When I came out of the chamber, and I saw all the people how they were panting, going up the Rapa of the Great Gallery, going through a huge heat, I started to wonder if that wasn't a big theater. There is an important debate about whether what Obs was ever buried in the stone sarcophagus, as in the stone sarcophagus inside the royal chamber. There are many voices that say no.
Networking friends, looking at our origins, how's it going? We're back. Chapter 8, we continue to move inexorably forward through this book that moves to the research of Miquel Pérez-Sánchez Pla, of that doctorate in architecture that is revealing us so many things, of ancient Egypt and especially of the Great Pyramid. We are crazy about this research. I'm the first because after the last chapter, chapter 7, I had to pull myself together. A lot of information and very powerful, but I tell you that the one that is coming now, I don't know if you'll believe me if I tell you it's even more powerful. Miquel, how are you? Hello again. Hi, how are you?
I'm really
how
glad
are you?
you've broken down a bit, because if not, let's see, if what I'm explaining makes you hypertensive. Come on, I don't know, it would be a bit...
I was expecting something else because, of course, as I told you, I had just read the book some time ago. Dina, then I got back into it to start doing the video podcast and so on. But it is true that, of course, I have looked at it with a different perspective. I've looked at it a little more through your eyes to go deeper into certain things. What happens? When you go deeper in certain aspects, you get more confused. Of course, you go deeper, you get more disoriented, and then you have to contextualize it with a human being of the 21st century who has a series of more or less established knowledge, and you say, is this so? Is this so? What do we do with...
Frustrating. With this? Yes, I think you have done the reading that I proposed to the more restless readers. I think you have done the reading diagonally. From bold to bold, because in the book, the texts that are discoveries are separated and underlined in bold. And in such a way that when you read the book page by page, as you should do the first time, things are explained to you, so the discoveries are more diluted. But the difficulty is that you have to read the book page by page, as you should do the first time. But the difficulty is that if you go from discovery to discovery, you end up overwhelmed, which is what happened to me at the time of finding them. Because the wisdom it contains is very disconcerting.
Is it? Yes, it is true that when you read the book more in a general context, when you enter Harina and read everything from page 1 to the last, it is true that you have an explanation. But what is common when you read, whether you read diagonally or not, is the magnitude of the things that appear. What we were talking about in the last chapter, the Syrian issue, there the thing starts to take a direction that you say, wow.
Isn't it? Yes, the subject of Sirius is very disconcerting because it presupposes a knowledge of astronomy that to calculate the distance of a star that is 8.6 light years away, that really puzzles. That is to say, let's see, when we say 8.6 light years, we mean if we are now in the year 2024, that the light that our eyes see came out about 9 years earlier. That is, the light that we are seeing from Sirius came out of Sirius in 2015. Of course, it breaks our space-time conceptions, the truth.
Well, taking this small piece of information and this small reflection on the last chapter, I take this opportunity to tell you, we were saying how important it is to read the book. You have it at your disposal. Above the comment box, in the description of the book, you have the link in case you want to buy the book. Now, you will enjoy it very much, believe me. You will be able to delve into all the scientific methodology that is in everything we are explaining. And above all, to make you realize that this is a doctorate, that this has an official certificate behind it, and also with a good grade, Miquel? You did your homework well, you got a good grade. Well, I received the maximum generosity.
Well, I received the maximum generosity from the tribunal at the time. Of scoring. And by the way, I would like to take this opportunity to recall who was the president of my thesis tribunal. Gabriel Ferrate Pascual, who sadly left us on February 11th, and a great person. A doctor in engineering, founder of the Open University of Catalonia, the Open University of Catalonia, the Distance University, and rector for 20 years. Another, I think it was 12 years more, as rector of the Polytechnic University of Catalonia. A great person to whom I owe eternal gratitude for all the contributions he has made regarding the research process. He left us at the age of 91, and I take this opportunity to give my condolences, as I have already done personally, but once again to his family.
So that is also our tribute, isn't it? And it is also a tribute to him with these video podcasts, that he was also somehow involved and was part of all this. So he supported me.
He helped, he supported the thesis, he supported the subsequent research process. And we were deepening our relationship from the doctoral thesis, and I can say that he was a very good friend. He was a great lover of poetry and had an exceptional poetry collection. We had previously coincided in some poetry court, because you know that my second dedication for many years was poetry. For many years was poetry.
Well, with this moment that gives us the opportunity to approach chapter number 8. Well, I am just going to tell you the name of the chapter, and with this we will give you some information which, Miquel, I will give you a lot of protagonism as to how you want to manage it. And the title of the chapter says the following, chapter number 8, The Tomb of the Hidden Pharaoh.
Well, it starts with a quote from Antoine de Saint-Exupéry. What is essential is invisible to the eye. That is to say, curiously enough, I'm going to explain an anecdote that happened years ago, because it comes from the thread of what you are going to see now. I studied together with economist Antoine Castells in high school. He was the Minister of Economy of the Generalitat of Catalonia, and a person who has also been by my side with the whole research process. One day while talking, I explained to him the 1888 law and the difficulties that had arisen. Well, there are still difficulties in interpreting it. And then I got in touch with one of his brothers, Eugenie, a mathematician. And we had a long conversation in my office with Eugenie Castells. And then Eugenie, when he left me a little enigma, which is what he ended up calling the triangle of the 7 knots. And the triangle of the 7 knots is this. The camera, I don't know if it can capture it well, and if not, we will put it attached. It is a triangle, as you have seen, that has a kind of cross in the middle, in such a way that 7 knots are formed in the encounter between all of them. And the reflection that Eugenie made to me was, hey, look, you have to put a number in each of the knots of the encounters between the lines. There are 7 encounters, and therefore you have to put a number between 1 and 7 without repeating any of them, in such a way that the 5 lines that are formed, all of them add up to the same. Well, I figured it out quickly. And I started to study it. It gave me the clue that the important thing was to know what number you put at the top. Right. From that point on, and when I started to work on it, I found a huge surprise. It turns out that the numbers in the middle line, which will be 3 numbers, plus the ones on the bottom line, which are another 3, if you read them as 3-digit numbers, the top and bottom numbers always add up to the same thing. Take a guess. What can they add up to? Ting, 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 ting. 888. But that's just it. Sorry to give you the spoiler in case you wanted to find it, but hey, I'll help you out. The top goes to a 4. 880, 88, and 4. 892. So in the triangle of the 7 knots, we find the 2 essential numbers of the Great Pyramid. Of course, that left me perplexed, not the next thing. And from then on, I began to see if that little triangle could have any relation with the measurements of the Great Pyramid. With the measurements of the Great Pyramid. And to my great surprise, it does. Excuse me?
I am interrupting Miquel because when he asked you the enigma of the 7 knots, where does he tell you that this enigma comes from? You won't believe it. I'm from the Vanguard.
Ah, from the newspaper La Vanguardia. What I don't know is how this enigma got to La Vanguardia. That enigma. But, well, in any case, what really caught my attention is that number 888 and number 892 were in what I called the triangle of the 7 knots. And in all cases they came out, because of course always the 2 rows of intermediate numbers that affected 6 of the knots made up in their sum the number 888. Wait, and of course when we added the 4, which was the one at the top, it was 892. There is not only one solution, there are up to 12 solutions. Well, having said that, that's when I started to find the solution. Having said that, there I began to find that there were direct relations with the measurements of the Great Pyramid. I am not going to go into detail so as not to make it too long, but what I will tell you is that I was also struck by the fact that the triangle defined the 3 and the 7 knots defined the 7. Well, here we are going to approach here we are going to get closer to one of the most enigmatic historical figures in the history of architecture, which is the first architect who made a work in stone, Imhotep. It turns out that the name that has come down to us in Greek is Imusis. Well, the value number in 737 comes from the word imusis. And it turns out that we have the 7 in the knots and the 3 in the faces of the triangle. That made me think that it might have something to do with it. Well, yes, sir. But when you start combining the 3-digit numbers that come up, you get several times the number 737. So, I sensed that Imhotep might be the father of that little enigma. Well, from there I started to work on it, and I found that the values of the number of Imhotep, of the word Imhotep, were 737 and 89. Its product, if you try it, is 65,593. And that number corresponds exactly to the lunar months of exactly 1,937,000 days. Well, the thing is, and what does it mean? The only way I could understand it was to go to the geometry.
Can I digress?
Of course you can. We are here to talk.
It is that now it has come to me as an impact, to see if this way I can clarify myself and also establish concepts. And this way we all learn as well. I think that my process is probably the process that many of you are going through, so we also understand each other. I mean, I am going to put it in order. If you have a name that has a series of numerical equivalences, that is to say, it is not going to fit the number the way you want, you have to design the name in quotation marks.
It is a mistake without a doubt.
You have to design the name.
So that it fits. Yes, it's like this. It's just that, look, well, when I say design, yes, it's
you know what I mean?
I mean, let's see. In the second book, we will see something extraordinarily exceptional. Let's see. The word Imhotep begins with the letter iota, which is the number 10. The letter Mi, which is the number 40, the letter Omicron, which is the number 7, the letter Y, which is the number 400. Well, if we read these 4 numbers, we read them from the reduced value, we take the zeros out of it, and it would become 1474. Look what a coincidence. 174, 1474. That's exactly twice 737, which is 7, which is the number of the Imhotep's number. Therefore, not only is it a design number, but there is a game behind it. See, it is not only a design number, but there is a game behind it. But there may be a much more transcendent game here, an astronomical game. But we're going to have to wait for book 2, because it could be that this number is giving us something very exceptional. Might be giving us something very exceptional. The date of Imhotep's birth? Okay. Well, we'll leave that here, won't we? We'll leave that here. But, what? Does seem clear. is that it is a designed number. The number 737 has astronomical connotations, as we shall see later. And in any case, I was just telling you that the product value, I corresponded exactly to 1,937,000 days. If we take the product value as lunar months, that is to say, I return to the subject in case it was not clear. The product value of the word Imhotep was the 737, which is the nominal value, by the ordinal value 89. It turns out to be 65,593.
And those are the lunar months of 1,937,000 days.
Right. 1,937, when you go to the geometry table, 6,500 words researched. It tells you something. And something very transcendent. Destruction of the comet. Of course. And you will ask me, what are you talking about? Now, well, let's leave it for later. Also, in Book 2, we talk deeply about this topic, which will remain a decisive issue in the whole research process. The great axis of the research process. I repeat, destruction of the comet. With his name, he is talking about the destruction of a comet, Imhotep. Now, well, there are a series of measures that are directly associated, as I have told you, to the triangle of the 7 knots. But there is an element of the triangle of the 7 knots that caught my attention very much, which is that the base and the height were proportioned with the numbers that came out of the triangle of the 7 knots, the base and the height of the Great Pyramid. But there was an intermediate line that gave us a number. Working on that intermediate line gave us a number. Begins to solve the great enigma of the Great Pyramid, which is posed in the second part of this chapter, In Search of the Tomb.
Let's recapitulate for a moment. That is, during all the years that we have had knowledge of the Great Pyramid, after all the Egyptology, all the disciplines that have been in charge of studying it, we have always been told that it is not the tomb of any pharaoh at the end. We have always been told that it is not the tomb of any pharaoh at the end.
No, I have no doubt that it is the tomb. But you do say that, let's see, Egyptology has said it very clearly from the beginning, in spite of the fact that, strangely, the monument is mute. Because there is only one reference to Cheops in the unloading chambers, in which it is said that it could be a forgery of Weiss. It is a cartouche. Yes, it is a cartouche drawn in the discharge chambers that are over the royal chamber, over the king's chamber. Royal chamber over the king's chamber. So I have no doubt that it is the tomb.
The tomb. But I say that in general, what has always been said, what has always been studied, what has always been said, is that it has not served as a tomb.
And how can you say that it is the tomb?
Another thing is what your research can say.
Is the forgery? I totally disagree. That is to say, some people have said that it didn't come out of the tomb, but I have no doubt that it did. In other words, you are 100% sure that Cheops has to be there, very clear, and that he is there. That he is there. That he is still there. It is still there. Fortunately, it's still there. But it's waiting for us. And it's no joke. We are going to see? Let's see. And I know it may sound strong, but it is. Let's see. Several things are happening. My personal impression, I had the first time I went through that I entered the Great Pyramid, that I went through the descending channel, the descending corridor, the Great Gallery, I arrived at the chamber. When I came out of the chamber, and I saw all the people as I was panting, going up the Rapa of the Great Gallery, going through a huge heat, I started to wonder if that wasn't a big theater. There is an important debate about whether about whether Cheops was ever buried in the stone sarcophagus. In the stone sarcophagus inside the royal chamber. There are many voices saying no. And I, there before pronouncing myself, better said, I agree that it was hardly there, unless it had been temporarily. Let's see. The first thing that calls our attention is that the size of the sarcophagus is quite... it is larger than the size of the access corridors. It is superior to the size of the access corridors. So it means that the sarcophagus was placed there in the process of construction of the pyramid. There? And of course the question is, how important was that sarcophagus for it to be there in the construction process of the pyramid?
What I do remember when I read the book, which impressed me a lot, is when you commented, that is, you commented, that is to say, you developed, rather said, that the sarcophagus itself, even if we use the gem, responds, even if we use gematria and so on, it responds to a homage. Yes, and it is also very symbolic.
Enormous character, let's see. It is true that the lid of the sarcophagus is missing, but if we take the lid of Miserino's sarcophagus as a reference, and we complete the volume of the sarcophagus, we find an absolutely exceptional surprise, which is that is proportionate with the volume of the Great Pyramid. So that if you divide the volume of the Great Pyramid by the volume of the sarcophagus, the result is absolutely millimetric. The result is absolutely millimetric. The result is 892,000.
Now, that is, we recover the name, once again, the name of the mother situation.
But mother. And so, yes, we will see what the number 1000 means in the next chapters. When we talk about the importance of the stellar canals and how the stellar canals allow the dating of the Great Pyramid. We have talked in previous video podcasts about how ancient Egypt could be the heir of a mother civilization that died in a great cataclysm. That disappeared through a great cataclysm. So the question is, isn't that 892,000 a tribute to the dead of the mother civilization? And the sarcophagus of Cheops was not really a symbolic funerary urn, where it would represent that they would be symbolically collected. The dead of that mother civilization in that great catastrophe.
To me it fits with the imagery of the chamber itself, because before you talked about all that, the entrance through the Great Gallery, which is a great theatre. I have not been lucky enough to be there in person. I hope one day to be able to go. But looking at the photos, it also fits me with that sense of staging to suggest something. That's true.
Yes, so of course that great staging could have a key element of the distraction, which is that successive looters, which there were, though understood that the tomb had already been looted, well, the study of the pyramid in 2 and 3 dimensions, the section of the pyramid, and combined with the triangle of the 7 knots, gives us the position of the chamber of the Pharaoh Cheops. We associated with some of the essential numbers of the whole research process, in such a way that, in addition, if you cut by a plane, the position where it is and measure the surface of the small pyramid that would be on top of the Pharaoh, the presence of the number 888 is a barbarity. It is a constant intensity, the presence of that number. So let's see. The book talks about the exact position of the Pharaoh. Nevertheless, after reflecting on it, I have decided that this topic, as we are going to translate into English the video podcasts into English, it will be better to announce it. In a video podcast or in a conference, we will see how, a posteriori, because I personally have a great illusion to participate in the discovery of Cheops, and I think I can help my Egyptian friends to find it. Because what I have no doubt is that the position of the chamber responds to mathematical and geometrical laws, absolutely exceptional. and totally linked to what I have been discovering so far. Therefore, I believe that the position of the camera responds to absolutely exceptional mathematical and geometrical laws. I believe that I can help to find Pharaoh Cheops, that by the time he is found, laugh with all the respect I have for him, of the wicked treasure of Tutankhamun, because we are talking about the most important, you have the most important pharaoh of the ancient empire, of the richest pharaoh who managed to mobilize up thousands of workers, and a barbarity of tons of stone to carry out the most important work of ancient Egypt. The question is, what will this pharaoh's chamber contain?
And that's why we call it Rediscovering Our Origins, because here we have an opportunity to redefine everything we know, and also tangible, we have it there. Tangible, we have it there. We have it there. Touching. Miquel, you are telling me that you have the map with the X. Or with the K? With the K, with the X, I don't care.
The prison of Cheops. You've got it right there. Or to be exact, with the prison of Khufu, which was the real name of the pharaoh Cheops.
Gentlemen of the Egyptian Ministry of Antiquities, listen, please take a look at the book. And we talked. Let's talk. I want to put on my saloon and head up there, Miquel. Take me on a hike. You've turned into a businessman, hey? I've totally turned into commercial people. That was not foreseen. It's necessary. It's necessary because we have to sell the product, because this has to be done this way.
Well, above all, what I think is absolutely important is that the ideas that are gathered in all the research work, do not fall on the sack, because I believe that there can be a very important contribution to the history of ancient Egypt and to the history of our civilization. Especially if we get what we are looking for, that is, if we manage to find the Pharaoh Cheops, and if we manage to find the place where the mother civilization of ancient Egypt rests. Egypt, look. All the time we are talking of intersecting data in a polydimensional system of interrelationships, that what they do is in a way that is difficult to understand. Cross mathematics, geometry, astronomy, geodesy, and that new science that has to make a science here, geometry. We'll look, for example, what happens with the inclination of the Great Gallery. I am absolutely convinced that there is a very small difference with the different measurements that have been given, which is 1 degree of speed of 1 degree of speed. That is 10 times the square of the golden number. Let's transform it into arc seconds. Multiply by 3,600. 94,249, a Capicua number that will not tell you too much until you put it on a spreadsheet and square root it. 307 squared. Remember we said it was 307 in the previous video podcast?
Wait, they are already crossing me. You tell me, Miquel, I can't remember.
Horizons.
There are horizons, it's true. Yes, yes.
Again, the word horizon in a monument, that is the horizon of Cheops, and that in the inclination of the Great Gallery. That is to say, all the time they are telling us, look at the horizon. And the question is, from where do you see the horizon more and better? From above or from below?
Yes, you see from above.
That's right. That's right. At about these pages forward,
these pages that I have
precisely where the
Jump
Cheops chamber is. Now we don't talk about it. The summary of this subchapter is as follows. The secret parts of the Great Pyramid must be the rooms of the Pharaoh. When the caves of this sacred mountain created by man were his chambers. That is to say, remember, and that the base of the Great Pyramid is 440. That 440 means mountain. And the sacred mountains, as in the case of Mount Ida of Zeus, had caves. And it turns out that the caves of that sacred mountain were the chambers of the god, of the Pharaoh.
We've always said that too, haven't we? I think we mentioned it in the first ones. You alluded to the sacred mountain, to rebuild a mountain crowned, bathed by the sun, which is the magical moment of a mountain when the sun impacts with its rays on the mountain. This monument has everything. It has mysticism, it has science, more than anything else. It is all together.
I mean, I think that the mixture of the two things is the
it's the big key, of course.
That is to say, what really surprised me of the whole research process is how the ancient Egyptians fused the idea of a unique primordial god with their science. But really that fusion between science and religion is very difficult to find later on. Notice that if at this moment we are at perhaps the peak of the research process from the point of view, let's say, of the curiosity that everyone has about ancient Egypt, which is the discovery of the tombs of the pharaohs, in this case of the most important pharaoh of Egypt. Notice that we are going to make a leap now to what I understand was the pinnacle of their civilization from the scientific point of view. Do you remember that I talked about the speed that, let's see, into the latitude of the Great Pyramid was 29.98 degrees? Let's refine it further. It turns out that, to be exact, is 29.9792458 degrees. I repeat, 29.9779248 degrees. Now I am going to do a very simple thing. If you have taken note, it will make it easier for you. If you haven't, I'll repeat it. We're going to run the comma. And now we are going to write the same number that you have written before, those of you who follow me, which is 2999 7992 458. Do you know what this is?
I know, but I'll let you say it.
You say it? The speed of light in meters per second. In other words, I've done this check many times, I don't know how many, and over the years. Do you know what the error is that I get in the center of the Great Pyramid? 8 meters. A worst case scenario. Do you know what is the level of error of the GPS system on Earth? 10 meters. So in the case where the deviation from the center of the Great Pyramid is maximum, it turns out that it's still less than the error. What does this mean? It has always been speculated that if the Egyptians had placed the pyramid at that latitude, it was because it was close to 30 degrees. Well, they were not wrong, but what no one could have imagined is that this would be exactly the speed of light.
In meters per second.
Or if you like it better, in kilometers per second, 299,792.458. Because remember that since we were children, they explained to us that the speed of light was 300 kilometers per second. Well, 299,790.
A doubt that remains to me with respect to this. Is there a referential crossing so that you can say, sure, speed of light with the number itself, let them say. Is there a double crossover?
Double crossover. Effectively, look, if I cut the pyramid and I cut it through a plane, that is 5 real cubits in height above the plinth, or 6 real cubits high above the ground, which are numbers that are associated with the meter, because 6 real cubits is equal to 3.1416 meters. So, while 5 real cubits is 2.6180 meters, which is the number phi squared. Therefore, these are 2 known mathematical formulas. I repeat, 5 real cubits equals phi squared meters, and 6 real cubits equals pi meters. What does this mean? That this cutting plane that is referenced to the top of the plinth is the floor. When you calculate the surface of that cutting plane upwards, 299,792 real cubits. That is, and there are more, and there are some more, like, for example, the one that we saw before, which was that the perimeter of the Socally in contact with the ground was 29.98 pletros. That is, there are several times that it emerges confirming the presence of the reality of light in the Great Pyramid. Of course, this doesn't absolutely break the schemes. Absolutely. I take this out. Let's see, I published it. This is already in my doctoral thesis. It was published in 2008. In my webpage, this was collected in 2012. In my book, it is in 2015. And then it appears in the History Channel in 2018. The History Channel. Gentlemen of the History Channel, please, when you publish things, put the references of where they come from. I would appreciate it. Because I insist, when I discovered it in 2008, it was nowhere.
The History Channel, is that the famous History Channel? Yes. The Ancient Aliens,
Yes.
all of those? Yes. Man, hello George Orkalos, it's the one with the... But so...
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes. Well, a friend gave it to me that they
I'm
had
telling you
found
that I
it,
know
that
what
they
you're
had put it up. I say, well, thank you very much, but at least refer to the source, right? I say.
I know. Well, they are. I had already heard this kind of thing. I had already heard that they use a lot of information that they do not validate, nor respect, nor confirm. I confirm. But they also do highly positive things like spreading the word. It is a debate that Miquel and I can't agree on because I can't stand it. But Miquel has a much more positive view of them. I don't.
Well, I think that there are elements of dissemination in the History Channel that are very interesting. Yes, but the point, let's see, here we are already debating, but the point of view from which they start, yes, well, obviously, if you look at it from a strictly scientific point of view, you're
And
right.
this is science.
No doubt you are.
Don't forget that this is science. I'll repeat it as many times as necessary. This is the basis. The basis of this book is a very important doctoral thesis. Thesis certified by the Spanish state. In other words, in the end, this is...
For real science, for the Polytechnic University of Catalonia. Yes, it is true that I received a grant, from the Ministry of Education. The Culture and Sports in 2015.
Science, yes, of course it
precisely
is
to
a science.
disseminate the contents of the book at a digital level. And precisely the digital book is made with that subsidy. Yes, look, I would not want to leave the main topic. Yes, let's not leave because the main topic, because in the end we debate and that's where we leave. Poor thing, because we still have something very important left. That is to say, we have found that the Egyptians, and it seems, or as shown by the Great Pyramid, knew the speed of light. Well. Do you know, among other things, what it was used for? Let's see if you can guess what they were able to calculate. As 1,000,000 times the perimeter of the horizon of Cheops multiplied by the speed of light.
We come from the last chapter of talking about Sirius. I imagine being a value that can be related to other astronomical measurements and to distances in space. Well, with an astronomical measure.
Yes, and the Sirius distance can be calculated with total and absolute accuracy as 1,000,000 times the perimeter of the horizon of Sirius multiplied by the speed of light, considering that the Sirius distance is exactly 1,000 times pi light days. That is, it is a matter of mathematical substitution that I will not go into detail now, but I insist, if the Sirius distance, they considered it as, we have a basis to believe so, as 1,000 times pi light days, that is to say, as 3,141.6 light days, that distance is exactly equal to 1,000,000 times the perimeter of the horizon of Cheops multiplied by the speed of light. Multiplied by the speed of light. What does that mean? Oh, it means that the horizon of Cheops, my friends, the horizon of Cheops was Sirius. You see what I'm saying?
I mean, we've come before to talk about the horizon of Cheops being the Earth, but you're telling me that the horizon of Cheops is Sirius. I mean, look.
It was Sirius all the time, that's right. So the horizon of Cheops, we could say that it extended mathematically
All the way to Sirius.
with the main star of the constellation Canis Major, which symbolized Isis and probably also her son Horus, and which is the brightest star of the night, let us not forget. Well, even the radius of Sirius equals 29,000 times the radius of the horizon of Cheops. You ask me, what is 29? The word anax, which in Greek means king, ordinal value of the word king. And to see how all this ties in with our friend Imhotep, I say friend, with all due respect. For it turns out that the distance Sirius is equivalent to, given 137.7.737 periodic, squared astronomical units. That is to say, if we multiply 737.7.737 twice by itself, be taking the measure and multiply it by the distance to the Sun, which is the astronomical unit, gives us the distance Sirius. Therefore, also the name of Sirius allowed us the name of Imhotep. I repeat, also the name of Imhotep allowed us. Please. Also the name of Imhotep allowed us to calculate the distance Sirius from the distance to the Sun. Really, you will understand to what point these affirmations dislocate me.
It is complicated to assimilate it from the point of view of that they are making continuous references to a star that is far away. And on top of that, they show us that they know how to calculate it using astronomical measurements.
And on top of that, they show us that the name of the Great Pyramid is associated with Sirius. And now to finish, notice that we are in chapter 8. And it's no coincidence, obviously, because 8 is the key number in the whole research process. I would like to ask you a question. Let's see. Imagine that civilization that had the knowledge of the speed of light had to have a coordinate system. It had been said, and it has been confirmed precisely with the latitude of the speed of light, the latitude, remember, which is the distance to the equator, with the latitude associated with the speed of light is confirming that they knew the position of the equator. So right, and the question is, hey, where could these gentlemen put an objective reference of the meridian? Because we have put it in Greenwich. What is Greenwich? Greenwich is simply a product of a political agreement between the English, the British, and the British. Of a political agreement between the English, French, and Americans in the Washington Congress. So what gave them the idea of putting the Greenwich meridian on the side of the telescope that had been set up in the 17th century by King Charles II of England? But now the telescope has changed and they had to put a cairn. So Greenwich is unique, pure and simple. Iranelea convention. Now imagine a civilization that instead of a convention had sought an objective element of location. The question is, hey, well, where do we put it? And all right, let's imagine we have an orange. Here we would have to pour an orange. This orange is totally smooth. I take it by the poles, I rotate it like this, and mark a point. This is Greenwich. But now many oranges fluoresce. They have elements that stick out. Let's imagine we take the most important element sticking out of the orange and say, this is my zero meridian. What is the most important fluorescence on Earth? The highest point, right? That's right. Mount Everest. I fell in love with Mount Everest since I was a little boy, because my grandfather, when I was sick, because I spent some time in bed, with throat problems and things like that. Before I was 8 years old, he gave me a Universal Atlas. This Universal Atlas from the Aguilar Publishing House, I devoured it. And I was always struck by the fact that the height of Mount Everest, in some places it was listed as 8,882, in others as 8,881. As I was born on the 8th, and my mother insisted for a long time that I was born at 8 o'clock in the morning, I said to myself, well, look, I have to do with this mountain. Unfortunately, life has not given me enough time to go up it, which is now a long and complicated tourist excursion, but very beautiful. Well, the thing is that, for that reason, I decided to calculate what could happen with Everest. And oh, surprise! The first of them is that the latitude referred from the Great Pyramid to Mount Everest is nothing more than... Excuse me, the difference in geographical longitudes, I mean, it is nothing other than on the perimeter of a circumference that would have the 8.88 degrees of radius. That is to say, the distance between the Great Pyramid and Everest, measured as a difference in geographical longitudes, is 55.7.99 degrees. And that's the same as the perimeter of a circumference of 8.88 degrees radius. Again, ping Tinkerbell by... I decided to calculate the distance from the Great Pyramid to the equator. And it gave me 3,332 degrees in a kind of uniform meridian distribution. And then I calculated also the longitude to the equator. 5,380 kilometers. Do you want to believe that they form a Pythagorean turn? That is to say, 5,380 squared minus 3,332 squared is exactly 4,224 squared. Do you know how extraordinarily difficult it is to get a Pythagorean turn with 4-digit numbers? If I also tell you that 5,380 is the sum of two square numbers, 666 squared plus 32, and that 3,332 is the subtraction of those two square numbers, 66 squared minus 32 squared, imagine how much I find. So, with what I find, that this is the first of the Pythagorean triads, there is a second one that is now complicated to explain, and a third one, which is when you divide the real distance in measures on the parallel, not the parallel, not the one we have said before, but the real one, because the further north the parallel goes, the smaller the measurement. And it ends up being, at the height of the pyramid, it ends up being 48.3266 degrees. You divide it by the latitude of the pyramid, and it gives you 1,000th of 1,612. If you do it the other way around, you get 1,000th of 620. 1,612 and 620 are again another turn. So 1,612 squared minus 620 squared is 1,488. To sum up, the geographic coordinates of the Great Pyramid with respect to the equator and the equator and the objective zero meridian of Mount Everest are three Pythagorean turns. That is absolutely impossible to be possible. And I do not continue counting the numbers that are deduced from here, because it is already more complicated, and I think we have enough for today.
Calm down, nothing
Praise.
more. I refer you to the book, it's all there, all the data is there. Miquel, I am still trying to process that the Egyptians knew that Mount Benes was the highest point on the planet. That doesn't mean that they didn't just know Mount Benes, but that they knew what the highest point was. That's another dimension. Yes, that means I leave the question that they knew very well everything on our planet, everything that was on it.
Look, what I can tell you are two things. Egyptian hieroglyphs, and I don't know if the remains of a ship have been found in Oceania. In Oceania. In Australia, yes, I don't know if it was in Australia or in New Zealand. In Australia it seems to me, yes. But well, in such a way that they were much better navigators than it seems. But I insist that they developed their knowledge in a wonderful way and applied it to unique monuments in the history of mankind. But their knowledge was inherited. Another thing is that later they made it evolve, which I have no doubt. But look at it. As coloring of this 8th chapter, I would like to read the last, a bold underlined of the same that says the following. The sum of extraordinary facts, scientifically verified in the course of 20 years of research on the Great Pyramid of Cheops, should lead us to rethink the evolution of the Great Pyramid of Cheops, should result in the need to rethink the evolution of civilization and life, of civilization and intelligent life on Earth.
Well, we leave it there because it is the perfect conclusion for this chapter and also gives us time for you to think about it. for you to think about it, for you to assimilate it, and above all, to leave us comments. And above all, leave us comments. Regarding the comments, we look at them all. Surely in a while we will do something with them, probably a special program. We will be watching it. We will be commenting on our social networks. Follow us there in all our social networks. Give us a like if you liked the video. Subscribe, that also helps us a lot. And as always, Miquel, thanks for the program. Thanks to you. Thanks to you. Thanks for being there. See you in the next one. Take care. A hug.